Greetings, friends. Welcome to today's devotional, Psalm 77. I cry aloud to God that he may hear me. In the day of my trouble, I seek the Lord. In the night, my hand is stretched out without wearying. My soul refuses to be comforted. I think of God and I moan. I meditate and my spirit faints. You keep my eyelids from closing. I am so troubled that I cannot speak. I consider the days of old and remember the years of long ago. I commune with my heart in the night. I meditate and search my spirit. Will the Lord spurn forever and never again be favorable? Has his steadfast love ceased forever? Are his promises at an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger shut up his compassion? And I say it is my grief that the right hand of the Most High has changed. I will call to mind the deeds of the Lord. I will remember your wonders of old. I will meditate on all your work and muse on your mighty deeds. Your way, O God, is holy. What God is so great as our God? You are the God who works wonders. You have displayed your might among the peoples. With your strong arm you redeem your people, the descendants of Jacob and Joseph. When the waters saw you, O God, when the waters saw you, they were afraid. The very deep trembled, the clouds poured out water, the skies thundered, your arrows flashed on every side. The crash of your thunder was in the whirlwind, your lightning lit up the world. The earth trembled and shook, your way was through the sea, your path through the mighty waters, yet your footprints were unseen. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. So here in this psalm, in the first 10 verses, we see the psalmist is experiencing a very difficult trial in his life, and it seems as though God has abandoned or forgotten him, that his promises that he made long ago have ceased to exist. They've come to a complete end, and the psalmist is he's exhausted and at his wit's end for when this trial will end, and wondering and questioning where God is. And then suddenly, as if almost a light bulb goes on in verse 11, I will call to mind the deeds of the Lord. I will remember your wonders of old. Often in the midst of our trials, we can feel as though God has abandoned us when things are going really sideways in our personal lives, or even right now in the midst of a pandemic, and wondering why God's allowing so many people to get sick and so many people to die, and so much trouble to come upon this earth. Where is God in acting in that? Has he left and abandoned this world that he created, that for its entire history he has been involved in? And there's been times, I'm sure, have been times in the course of human history when things have happened that one would question, where was God in that? The Holocaust comes to mind, especially in light of the fact that there has chosen people. But throughout human history, there has been times where God seems to have stepped back from his involvement in the world. But in the end, or after the fact, you can often see, not always, but you can often see that things have changed, and there has been something that has come of a trial, either global, national, or whatever, that you didn't see while you were in the midst of it. I just read on Facebook a couple of days ago, a friend of mine who had passed away 4+ years ago. His widow, on today, which would have been their anniversary, posted something on Facebook that she missed her husband terribly and still grieved him deeply. But she realized as time has gone by that there have been some very positive things that have come that would not have happened had her husband not died. Now, God didn't cause her husband to die for those things to happen in her life, but that's just the nature of how God is. In the midst of what's happening in our world and in our life, whether God's whether God's controlling it or done it or behind it is really immaterial, but it's what he does with in the midst of those trials. And in this person's life, she was thankful and grateful for the things that she learned about herself, learned about her family and friends, and in her faith increased. Her relationship with God got much, much stronger because of that, because there were times where God was her only hope. And And certainly in the midst of a pandemic, God is active in what's happening in our world, in so many people's lives, in our churches, in our nation, in the nations across the world. God is active in doing something. And all we have to do is just look back and see over the course of history, even in those times when it seems as God had abandoned the world or abandoned us individually, you come out of it and you realize God was there all along. Sort of like that poem about the footprints. It seemed as though in the midst of a deep trial, there was only one set of footprints, but that was the time that God carried the author of that poem, not when that author was walking alone. So it only takes just a conscious effort to look back and see what God has done in our lives, in your own life, or in the lives of the people of this world, to realize he is always active and always doing something. And as Paul wrote in Romans, that all things work for God, for the good of God, for those who love him are called to his purposes. So even if you're not in the midst of a trial now, be assured they will come. Something will happen. And even in the midst of this pandemic, know that God is working things out as a part of his will and for the good of his kingdom, and oftentimes for our own good. That's our devotion for today. Tomorrow we have a very long psalm, Psalm 78, which will not be read because it's 72 verses long. So if you want to read ahead, feel free before you tune into the next devotional. Until then, be well.